Good morning. Okay, so good morning, everybody. I want to give you a little bit of an introduction into something I'm going to try. It's going to be quite a bit different from what I've been doing, but I think hopefully it'll help me get this project done a little quicker, and it'll give you the opportunity to have regular updates from me about how the project is progressing. So the start of the project is one of my patrons, Bob Teeter. He had this set of castings. It's about 80% of the castings that are required for the Gingery Mill project. And that's a project I've been contemplating starting. And Bob really pushed me right through to the start of the project by sending me these castings. And so, like I said, about 80% of the castings are there and are complete. There's a few that may need to be recast, and there's a handful that are missing. Some of the bigger things like the downslide for the tail stand, the cross slide, and the carriage casting. So those are all ones that I'll have to do during the project, but that's kind of where we're at. And the other, I guess the real thing that I wanted to talk about during this live stream is my intentions of doing status updates for you. I plan each morning to talk about the progress that I've made on the project, as well as to talk about the steps going forward. And that way you get a lot more real-time updates of what's going on with the project. It also gives me the opportunity to have some accountability and help me move the project forward, because I know this is coming. I plan to do that for about a month anyway, just to kind of see how it goes, and hopefully that's not going to overload anybody. I'm going to try to keep them short, maybe 5 or 10 minutes each morning, just so I can collect my thoughts and give you a little bit of an update. These aren't going to be the full-blown edits. I'm going to save that for once the project's completed. And like I said, after the first 30 days, I may refactor that, maybe go to twice a week or something like that. But this is really just an experiment. We'll see how it turns out. And I can try to answer questions too if you have questions. My wife is going to help field questions. So if you want to make sure that they get answered, feel free to email me, and I'll put them in the queue. Let's see.
Does anybody have questions now?
Does anybody have questions now?
Just type them in the comments, and I'll ask Cressel. Somebody wanted to know what the name of the new project is, and I just put the milling machine. Is that correct?
Yeah, this would be the Gingery Mill, I guess, milling machine. So this is book 4 from the series of books by David Gingery. And there's other folks who have made this project, but really the point here with the daily updates is to help the project progress rapidly. The shaper took about a year and a half. The lathe took several years. Different constraints during both of those projects, but this is just it's just an experiment. We'll see how it goes. Maybe it helps it go quicker. Maybe it's just a function of there being a lot of handwork. And
quick question.
Yes.
So some of the conversation that's happening is saying, so if you have the lathe and you have the Gingery shaper, aren't those basically milling machines? Like, do you feel like what does the mill provide that maybe they don't?
So I think the question there is, the lathe is the ultimate machine tool, and so you can do pretty much anything on a lathe, and that's true. The real issue, or the real benefit to, I think, a mill is that you've got an extra axis, so you can make things square more easily. You can surface without having to have an attachment on the carriage. Like you can do a face cut, and these are all things that you could do on the lathe, but I think it's just a dedicated machine that gives you the ability to have the full 3 axis of machining potential. This particular design is a horizontal mill. So the cutter is horizontal, and I guess one of the other features is it does have a tail stand, so you can do things like a slitting saw held in between. I guess it's on an arbor essentially between the tail stand and the headstand, and yeah. So I think there's definitely an advantage to having a mill.
Especially when somebody sends you.
Especially when somebody sends you a whole set of castings. So yeah, let's see.
So Ask Questions, Try Things says, are you doing direct pour lost PLA like lost foam, or are you doing plaster with burnout of the PLA like lost wax?
Okay, so my intention is to do lost foam. I can, especially like for the carriage, you'll see it's basically a square part with notches in it, different directions. It's a perfect application to use the X-Carve, cut the foam, from the model, glue a sprue to it, coat it in plaster Paris, drop it in the sand, pour it. I think it's a great application for something like that. Things that are more intricate and detailed, I think, benefit from like a lost PLA approach. And let me grab a rock here. This is a little bit of a spoiler slash. Active.
Benefit of coming to a live event.
Yeah, benefit of the live here. This is lost PLA handle that not a handle. It's a lost PLA bell that I cast. 3D printed this. It's going to be a bell. It's not complete yet, but there it is, kind of in its current state, and it's nice for things like the text on there because I think you'd have a hard time doing that with lost foam, but the 3D printer can get a lot of that. If you really, you see some of the print lines from the PLA, but it's kind of what are you going for? I think the bigger parts are, it's very nice to use the lost foam. Smaller parts, 3D printed, intricate parts. And for really high detailed, I think you need something more like a lost wax or something that you can more actively kind of sculpt and smooth at the state before it goes into the investment for the burnout and the pour. So
new question is, can you make it using brass casting in the place of aluminum?
For the parts that are, I presume that's a question of, could I use different material for the parts that are not present in the casting? I'm not going to redo castings unless I need to, and I think that for this project I will be going with aluminum. There's potentially, maybe I would cast something out of bronze if it's like a bearing surface or something, but generally speaking, I think it's going to be aluminum. I don't have the cast iron foundry yet, so I'm not doing cast iron yet.
Have you thought about using your lathe and shaper to create even more accurate machines, and maybe even make the lathe again in a better and easier way?
Oh yes, that has crossed my mind many times. Yeah, I think that lathe, as it sits over there, I think that lathe, it has a lot of potential still, like without redoing it. I think redoing the headstock would make it a better machine, and I think redoing the carriage would make it a better machine. I guess that's half of the machine, 2/3 of the machine, but but the headstock really, I think, is where the biggest benefit would come from, having the spindle, upgrades on the spindle. That's going to be the most mileage there. And then the split nut is the other. Really, the carriage is not terrible. The apron, the split nut in particular, is not good. Like those are the things that I would redo before I would completely rebuild a lathe. I would just kind of fix some of those things, and those may end up being daily status update type projects within this mill project. We'll kind of see how it progresses, but there'll be a lot of handwork up front. So today my intention is to get the bed kind of flattened out. The book says stick it on the surface plate, like as opposed to using the shaper, like trying to get it set up, because it's such a long casting. You don't have the full range of travel on the shaper. So you know, Gingery says stick it on the surface plate and you know, normal filing, hand tool, sand on a piece of abrasive paper, scrape it down, you know, print it in, scrape it down, get it flat. And Bob's actually already done some of that for me. Let's see if I can steal. Well, I'm just going to get this one. So you can see that he's had that on his, he's got a small mill. And so he's done some machining of it. You know, I can kind of get a sense as to the quality of the castings. I don't see any porosity. I'm not sure about the alloy. It looks like it might be a little gummier than what I'm used to working with, but anyway, that's what we would expect.
Would you ever consider trying lost foam with the vacuum packing of the sand, like commercial lost foam processes?
Possibly. I think I'd need a pretty big vacuum, and I guess I'm not sure about the vacuum, the industrial variety of it.
Somebody else asked, do you have a 3D model?
For the mill? No, I don't. Does anybody want to sign up for helping model it? I think I started something in Fusion 360, but then Bob sent this to me, and it's like, well, a lot of the benefit that I would get from the model is production of the patterns for casting, and since most of them are done anyway, I can just model up the one-offs and, you know, do the cam and, you know, machine or cut the parts out of foam on the X-Carve. But anyway, how are we at for time?
Everybody's just saying that they like the project and that you enjoy the process of making them. And I think that's all the questions we have right now.
Cool. All right. Well, I hope to see you guys again tomorrow, similar time, sometime in the morning. We'll try to hone in on a consistent start time as I kind of work the kinks out of my process here. But thanks for joining me, and I look forward to completing this project with you guys in a more real-time sense. So thanks. We'll see you around.